Hey, Liz.
Hey,
Welcome on
how is
in.
it going?
It's going very well. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad to hear that you're staying warm. It sounds like it's
Yeah.
pretty cold over there in Texas.
Yeah, so Frackberg is pointing out that everybody has varying definitions of, quote, very cold. For Texans, when it gets below 40, it's very cold. But this morning, I want to say that it was 27 Fahrenheit with a wind chill of 13 Fahrenheit. So,
It's
yeah,
the wind chill, Like
yes.
that's what makes it especially terrible, I think.
Well, and in Texas, I don't think that we ever get below like 90% humidity ever. So it's like
Wow.
wet and cold, which is pretty terrible. So
Yeah,
you just have to like constantly keep layering and layering and layering. So I do
that is
want to
a
point
tough
out we got
combination.
Joe Nash in the chat. Welcome in, Joe. Hello, Frackberg. Hello, Niels. Good morning, good afternoon, happy time zone to everyone, and welcome in. Hope that y'all are all doing well and having a fantastic day. So, Liz, I do want to give you an opportunity to go ahead and introduce yourself to chat. Obviously, I know who you are, but for everybody else who doesn't know who you are, why don't you go ahead and give yourself a quick introduction?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, and thanks for having me on your show, Chris. This is so
My pleasure.
exciting. I've watched it before, so it's very cool to be on it as a guest. Yeah, my name is Liz. I am based out of London, and as Chris mentioned, we work together as developer evangelists at Twilio. And I have only been in London for maybe like 7 months. But before that, I was based out of New York. And then before I was at Twilio, I worked as a software engineer at Disney out in California. So
Very
I can
cool.
also definitely relate to not being used to the cold because when I was living in Southern California, I could not handle any sort of cold uh, after I adjusted to that.
Yeah, I don't do cold well. I can't. So okay. So before you went to London, where did you live in the U.S. before you moved to London? Because you've lived in a number of places, right?
Yeah, it's so funny. I was just talking about this with a friend earlier today, because I kind of forget like the different places that I've moved to. Because I started out in Ohio, which if you're not from the States, you don't know where that is. I think there's people that live in the States that don't know where that is. It's like in the middle of the
Yeah.
country, basically. And it's like pretty flat and rural and like farmlands. I mean, there's a couple like bigger cities, but for the most part, it's very like if you're an Ohio fan, I'm sorry, but I will probably hate on Ohio. I was not a big fan of Ohio. But I lived there and then I went to uni in Indiana for 2 years. And then I finished uni in North Carolina and I lived there for like maybe like 5 years.
Hmm.
And then I moved to California for the job at Disney, and then moved to New York for the job at Twilio. And then I
Yep.
came to London with Twilio. So it's
Oh,
been a
very
really
cool.
fun adventure.
So that's a lot of change. Like, how was that like over a short period of time that you did like all of your changing? Because I know like some people like they live in a bunch of different places over time, and then you have other people who you know they live in the same place their entire life, and then they move, and then they move, and then they move, and then they move. How was that for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I guess 17 years of my life was spent in Ohio, which is really funny because I like obviously openly dislike it. But yeah, I was so excited to leave Ohio. I just really couldn't wait. So I went a whole 3 hours away to Indiana, which was actually basically exactly the same. But yeah, and then after that, I feel like it's been kind of like 5 year stints in different places. So it's like
Hmm.
I kind of hang out one place for 5 years and then move. Although I guess New York it was more like 2 years, but I keep like saying that I like New York is the best. Like New York is my favorite place in the whole world. But um I did most of the pandemic. I did all of the pandemic in New York. The pandemic that we've experienced thus far.
Wow.
I did it in New
Yeah.
York. So like yeah, I was there. I had like just permanently moved there when it hit. So
Right.
it was a hard time to be there. And
Yeah,
I
I
was
can
like,
imagine.
yeah, so I think I'll go back one day, but I was like, I need a little break. I need a little taste of something else for a bit.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I went to New York for the very first time after Christmas this last year, and absolutely loved it. It was a little bit of sensory overload just because we were really close to Times Square while we were there.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and so like, I live in a big city, but I live in the suburbs of the big city, so I'm like almost 30 miles out. I'm about as far out as you can get with still being considered like in the city.
Hmm.
Um, and so like we were there and the food is amazing and the buzz in New York is amazing. It just has a really interesting feel. But
Hmm.
I was on sensory overload almost the entire time I was there.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. Like I went for the first time when I was 16.
Mhm.
Um, my parents gave me the choice. They were like, you can either have a big birthday party or you can go to New York. And I was like, no question, I want to go to New York.
Yeah.
I was a dancer. I was like a very serious dancer growing up, and like two of the really most well-known ballet companies in the whole world are in New York. So I was just like itching to go see some performances. And yeah, I remember being in Times Square for the first time and just being so overwhelmed because you have like all of the billboards, with all like the flashing lights, and then you've got the people and the cabs, and uh it's definitely a spectacle for sure. It's like it's a part of New York, but I would not say it's like my favorite part of New York.
Yeah, like we didn't have enough time to do as much going around to the different areas as I would have liked. But like we spent a little time like down in Little Italy, saw a couple shows on Broadway, stuff like that. Um,
Ooh, what
we
shows did you see?
so we went ahead and we managed to get tickets for The Lion King and Aladdin. Um,
Oh.
and they were both really amazing.
Hmm.
We wanted to see Hamilton, but like Hamilton on the nights that it was open were completely sold out. Um,
Yeah.
and tickets for Hamilton were just like absolutely outrageous for the price.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was like, we could go see two shows for the price of Hamilton. So we just like did a day. We actually ended up so the Lion King tickets that we had ended up getting canceled because
Oh.
of their COVID testing. And
Yeah.
then but they had the show open for 2 days later, which is the same day that we had Aladdin tickets on. So we just rebooked everything and just did like a day at the theater. And so we saw two shows in one day and it was a ton of fun. Um, so you mentioned something that's interesting. So you said you were really into dance. So how like into dance were you?
Oh, I was thinking about this recently because like I am just like tired, I'm like an adult
Yeah.
and I'm tired. Like I was walking earlier and my hip just like popped out of nowhere and I was like, cool. This is being an adult now. But yeah, I was very serious. Like I would go to rehearsals, every night after school and be there for, like 4 hours.
Mm,
So it was very much like I was very dedicated. For a while I really thought like, oh, this is what I want to do professionally. Like this is it for me. But then when it kind of came down to like, is this what I really want to do? Because it's so hard on your body.
right.
And when you're younger, your body is more resilient and can bounce back faster after injuries, or, you don't get injured as easily.
Right.
And, at a certain point, you like you really can't dance professionally. It's kind of like a very short time frame, and I was really lucky to dance with some really incredible other dancers, and many of them did go on to become professional dancers, and it was really cool to see them do that. There was definitely some envy, like there's part of me that was like, oh, maybe I should have like tried harder, stuck with it, but honestly at the end of the day, like I don't think that was just the right path for me. But there are
Right.
so many things that I learned from that experience, and so many wonderful friendships that I built as well. And it's just like it gave me a real appreciation for the arts. Like I really, really think it's just something that's so like it brings a lot of joy to people's lives, not just to like perform, not just to
Yeah.
watch it, but also to do it yourself. So I'm super grateful for all the years that I did it.
And so when you're talking about dance, you're talking about ballet dancing.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Okay.
was mostly classical ballet was like my thing. It was like my love. Like I was totally all about it. And then I did jazz and modern. I think I did tap until I was like in 6th grade, and then I was
Hmm.
like, no more tap for me. This is not it. But I also loved musical theater. I'm just an okay singer. Like I'm not great. So I would always be in like the school musicals, but usually they would just be like, they would put me up front and be like, dance, but don't sing too loud. So
Yeah. So little known fact about me, my high school year, my senior year of high school, I decided that I was going to be kind of lazy, which is kind of like the opposite of what most people do. Because like senior year for a lot of people is when they like buckle down and they're like, all right, get ready for college. Well,
mm,
I was an awful student. And so my senior year, I was like, I think I'm going to get out of this class and I'm going to go do something like choir or something like that.
nice.
And so I had done band in junior high and I was a musician in high school.
What
And I
instrument did you play in band?
So when I was in band, I played alto and tenor saxophone.
Oh,
Um,
cool. What's
and
your
then
instrument?
yeah. So I played saxophone, but then like in high school, I didn't want to march, and like in Texas, it's
Mm.
like either you're in the marching band because football is everything, or you're not in the band at all. And so I told the band director, I was like, I'm not marching. I'm not spending every Friday night at the football field. I was like, I don't even
Yeah.
like football, so I'm not going to do this. So I got out of band, and then um, in high school, I was like, well, I'm musical. I know how to sing. Let's do choir for fun.
Hmm.
So I did choir, and then I did a music theory class, and that year was the year that the high school choir decided that they were going to do a musical, and
Oh,
they ended up doing Grease. And
oh, that's
so
fun.
I I tried out for the musical just because I thought it would be fun, and I ended up landing the role of Danny Zuko in Grease.
Oh my gosh, you got the lead.
Yeah, so a lot of people hated me for that, but because they were like, "You just got into
You didn't
choir
even
this year,
try.
and
Or-
you
Yeah,
didn't really try for this. What the heck?"
yeah.
But so a lot of people hated me for it. But there are pictures floating around my family of me in like full stage makeup with my hair slicked back, and I got this big leather jacket on, and like my rolled up pants and my penny loafer shoes and stuff. Like it's very interesting. But I love musical theater. I absolutely love it.
Has your daughter seen this photo of you?
No, but I'm pretty sure my mom has it somewhere. And I think my mom still has like the programs that had my name, like the playbills that we had printed up and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I haven't seen the pictures in a long time. And for a while, there was a video floating around
Oh,
where
that's so good.
because somebody's mom, like, this is back before like YouTube and stuff was really like huge because I'm that old. But like somebody had brought in like their video camera and videotaped the
Hmm.
entire thing.
Oh,
Um,
amazing.
I don't know where the video is. I don't know if it still exists or not, but I do have pictures somewhere. I need to call my mom and see if she can dig them up. We'll like throw them in the Twilio Slack or something.
Just run for public office and all of that will resurface.
Yeah. I don't think that that's on my list of stuff to do. Um,
So just a fast and
Never.
easy way to get all of that to be sent back to you.
Yeah, so I can sing, but I'm terrible at dancing. Like all of the dance scenes that we had to do were, I was terrible. It was bad. Cannot dance to save my life.
I yeah, I we did like I feel like my high school didn't have a huge budget, so we kind of did some like lesser known ones. The first one that we did was called The Pajama Game. It's
Hmm.
really weird. I don't know if it's this way for you. I mean, Grease, I guess, was a popular movie, so maybe a lot of people
Yeah.
know the words to the songs um from like knowing the movie, but I feel like I still know the lyrics to like a bunch of these like songs from High School Musicals that I'm like I would love to use that brain space for something else, but unfortunately the main song from the Pajama Game I still remember every single lyric to.
Yeah, it's interesting because I still remember, like, I'm sure, like, you remember, like, a lot of your dances. You remember all of the moves, and like you can hear a song and like replay all of that in your head. Like for me, I remember the entire musical. I remember all of my, stage prompts. I remember like all of the choreography for everything. It's like one of those things that's just like forever etched in my brain that I can't get rid
Mm-hmm.
of.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was funny because I was in the Nutcracker like every year, through my whole childhood. And I was part of an academy of a professional ballet company. And so it was like that was, their biggest show really. That was how they made most of their money, was by doing the Nutcracker. So there would be, like 30 performances of the Nutcracker
Wow.
throughout the holiday season, because there would be like a matinee and then an evening. And like I remember one year I think I was playing like three different roles, and so I was in like 20 of the shows.
Wow.
And you just hear that music all the time. And I was watching a movie with a friend over the holidays, and I was like humming all the Nutcracker music along, and they were like, "How do you know all this music?" And I was like, I can't even tell you how many times I've heard every single song from the Nutcracker."
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, it's amazing how that stuff like gets stuck in your brain so hard.
mhm.
So, okay, so you're going to school, you think you're going to be a professional dancer, this is what you want to do, and then you come to this point where you're like, yeah, this really isn't it. So what do you do then? Like I don't even know where you go from there.
It's so funny. I was thinking about this the other day. I wish I still had the certificate. So I went to a liberal arts college, and they're pretty forgiving if you don't know what you want to do. Because I think a lot of students that go in, it was actually, I loved their ballet program. I really wanted to go to the school. It's called Butler University,
Hmm,
but I really wanted to go to Butler for ballet because their ballet program is incredible.
sure.
But I didn't get in. But I didn't get into the ballet program, but I still got into the school. So I was like, well, I really liked visiting. Like I just liked the way it felt, and I met a lot of really nice people. So I was like, okay, I'll just go and then kind of feel my way around. So they had this major. I don't know if they still have it, but they had a major that you could like join called Exploratory Studies. And it was just like a nice way of saying undecided, or like you didn't know what you wanted to do. But they actually had classes you could take um that would, and in the classes we would do like personality test, like Myers-Briggs types of things,
Oh
or
yeah.
like, different like like exercises to kind of like figure out like what do you actually want to do. So, and then there was like a shadowing part of it too, where you would find like people that maybe had careers that you were interested in, and so you would go shadow them and like write up reports about it and things like that.
Right.
So yeah, so that was the next step. I was like, all right. And then when I finally declared a major, I declared journalism as my major, and they gave us like a little certificate with her thing written on it, which is probably like the epitome of like, people are always like, oh, we're too soft on younger people now, like no more participation trophies and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I like look back and I'm like, oh man, that was totally me with my little like, you finally figured out something to do with your life,
You made a
certificate on
decision. Good
it.
job.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I felt like every single time I took one of those like personality tests or like aptitude tests or, what do you want to do with your life tests, it like changed based on my mood. Like I
Yeah,
never
that's
felt like I really
fair.
got
Mhm.
a clear answer from it. And then like the stuff that it was like, oh, you would be really good at this. I was like, "Pff, no, I wouldn't. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. So I always found those horribly frustrating.
It is. It is. And like, I don't know. I think that it can be very skewed as well, right? Like,
Yeah.
unfortunately, like there's a lot of things that are still quite gendered, and I think that some of those exercises could very much like end up becoming that way when you're doing
Hmm.
them. I think the shadowing part was really um kind of like what ended up helping me figure out what I actually could see myself doing. Because I knew that I liked writing a lot, and I knew that I liked talking to people. And so I was like, cool, this is like a combination of talking to people and writing.
Yeah.
So this is like, aligns with my interests, and you know, it had like a clear path forward to, I think, which at that point in my life, um, it is quite jarring to go from thinking you know exactly what you want to do to really not having any idea. So just
Yeah.
having some sort of framework to move forward in was really helpful.
So nowhere in this conversation have I heard anything about programming or technology or and so I'm still trying to put the puzzle pieces together. How do you go from journalism to that? Like what how many steps were there from journalism to development?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, so when I was younger, I went to this math and science camp. It was a math and science camp for girls, and it was really cool because it was like the first time I felt like I was in a community where I don't know. I found like I really loved math and science, but I found learning math especially really difficult because of the way that it was taught.
Mhm.
Um, and how I learned it. I still love math. Like I still am amazed by by math, but like I just it felt so intimidating and I always felt like really insecure around it basically. So when I went to that camp, it was the first time that I was like, "Oh wow, like I'm actually having a great time and I'm enjoying this." And I kind of got exposed to like some programming fundamentals there. And then it really wasn't until I was in university and they gave us these different options on like electives that you could take. Actually, it's funny, we were talking about video editing earlier.
Mhm. Yeah.
That was a required class for me. Video editing was a required class, and I was absolutely horrible at it. Like, I was so bad. But they also gave us programming classes as like an elective, and I took
Oh, nice.
those, and I was like pretty good at it, and I enjoyed it. So I kept taking those. I took a Flash class, and I distinctly remember that. That was like ActionScript 3.0 was like the
Yeah.
thing, which maybe ages and dates me there. Um, but
We
yeah,
won't
I
tell
was still
anybody.
kind of I was still like, oh, like this is just a good skill to have, right? It was like one of those things where I was like, I would rather like I want to write and I want to like work for, originally I thought I wanted to write like for a paper. And then
Mm.
it kind of morphed into like, oh, I ended up getting internships at these PR agencies. And I was like, oh, okay, I think I would like to do the PR side of things. It seems like a little bit more lucrative to be completely honest. I
Yeah,
was like
sure.
looking at my like student loan debt and I was like, how am I gonna pay this off? So yeah, so I started working in PR and um it just like was really obvious really early on that it was not the right career for me. Um
Sure.
I liked the writing aspect. That was always my favorite part of it was when I was writing things, and that was always what I was like, um, given good reviews on. I remember
Mhm.
like my first performance review at my first job, and it was just like carnage, except like Liz's writing is excellent and like blah blah blah. Like everything else, it was like I was not doing well.
Oh, no.
Um, so I was like, okay, maybe it's just this place. And then I went to another agency and same thing. I was like, oh man, I really don't like this. I'm really not having a good time. So there was this opportunity at a startup and it was funny because like social media was kind of like a new thing
Mhm.
when I was in uni, like it was just taking off. And so when I was doing these internships, I would always get given all of the social media stuff because they were just like, she's on Twitter, whatever. Like, I think Instagram wasn't even really like a thing when I think Instagram maybe became a thing like when I was graduating my
Yeah.
last year of college. So, um, so yeah, so I was doing more like digital marketing stuff and there was this opportunity at this music startup and I love music. I at the time was like really was like, yeah, like maybe I want to go work in music or something. And so it was like this music startup and I went there to do their digital marketing and their community management
Mhm.
and it was so fun. Like it was a great job for like the first 8 months of it. Um and I really liked what I was doing and it went really well. And it was when I was there that I was working with developers a lot. It was a Ruby shop and
Mhm.
I because it was like they made sort of like they made these tools that like were supposed to be useful for independent artists and their like sort of selling point or their claim to fame was like they were one of the first, maybe the first like company to make like embeddable music players so you could
Oh, okay.
like take like a little snippet of code and then like put it on, whatever site. I don't
Sure.
know, maybe MySpace had something like that too. Maybe that wasn't they weren't the first, but anyway, they were early on in like that sort of thing. And that's how people started hearing about them, was because artists would like use, the little media players on their sites.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then I was like, I think I would like to do this more. I think I would like to do more with this, because I would sometimes like work on little projects with people, and like I put together like newsletters and HTML and stuff. And but boot camps had just started taking off, and there was this one. I was living in North Carolina at the time, and I remember there was this one that was really popular there, but you had to like take off 3 months, and they were pretty expensive. And
Yeah.
I was like, this does not make sense for me, even though I really want to do it. I'm not the type of person that finds it easy to like sit down and like learn something start to finish. I very much, and I learn better when I'm in like a community and I'm in a group of people.
Yeah.
So the boot camp thing seemed super appealing to me and like very in line with like how I learn, but the timing was just not, it wasn't right.
Well, and it
So,
seems like that's a pretty big ask of a lot of people, especially like if you need your job. How do you
mhm,
how do you just like quit your job and go do this boot camp for 3 months? Like, how do you pay your
yeah.
bills? So, I mean, you have a lot of people who a boot camp just really doesn't work for their
Mhm.
situation. Like, I that wouldn't have worked for me at all because I had to work full time while I
Mhm.
was in college. So that's not a solution. So the boot camp didn't work. You're in a Ruby shop. Like, what do you do exactly to start learning code and kind of getting into that? Did you find like some kind of formal class that you could do online? Did you just like pick it up from learning from the people that you worked with? How did that come to pass?
Yeah, I think the other thing, it was very much a paradox at the startup, because on the one hand, I knew that I could do the job, right? Like I knew that I could do this job that I saw other people doing, that before I had been like, "Oh, no, I'm not smart enough. Like I'm not, whatever." There's
Mhm.
like a lot of, and I think that's just a thing for me too. Like I think I tend to err on that side of just like thinking I'm not good enough at stuff. And like the imposter syndrome thing as well is
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
it's a thing. Um but yeah, I ended up so I left the startup, but made some of my best friends there, like people that I'm still like best closest friends with. So it was time for me to go, and I got an offer from Disney to do content marketing for a group there. They had this vlog at the time that was like basically like Disney's version of BuzzFeed.
Oh, okay.
And I went and I was basically running their music vertical. So it was really fun. It was very in line with like kind of what I'd been doing before. And actually, like when you were talking about Aladdin, one of my favorite projects was I got to go and do this whole video shoot with the cast of Aladdin on Broadway.
Oh,
And
wow.
we had them like record some covers, like Aladdin and Jasmine did like the Ed Sheeran song, the like really famous one, I like can't remember it now, but they did a cover of that. Genie, oh my gosh. The guy who used to play Genie is like amazing. Like I think actually he might be in Hamilton now. But
So
he
he's the
is
one that
so good.
did he was the one who was doing Genie while I was in New York. He had come back to do Genie again, and like I remember, so like we're sitting there and like the scene in the Cave of Wonders where Genie comes out of the lamp, like the entire theater goes crazy when he comes
Oh,
out of the
yeah.
lamp. And I mean, probably a good minute and a half of just screaming and cheering and hand claps, and definitely made the show what it was. My
He
absolute
is
favorite.
just so full of life and has such just a wonderful personality. He's just so cool. Like it was such a joy to actually get to like meet him and work with
Mm.
him. And he had like the video is still up on YouTube. So if anybody like sees this and is at all curious, it's still up.
Go hunting
It's
chat.
on like one, yeah, I think it's on, if you look up like Oh My Disney, that was the name of the blog. He did, um, Never Had a Friend Like Me. He did Friend Like Me, but he came up with like a rap that he wrote and he does it in it, and it's so good. Um, yeah, because it was like he was like, "Oh, I have this thing that I could do," and we were like, "Oh yeah, like let's see." And then he did it, and we were like, "Yeah, you have to do that. Like it's so good." Um,
That's amazing.
so it was like, yeah, it was really cool. Like that job was super fun. I would like go to red carpet events and like the parades and stuff that they would have at the
Sounds like a
parks,
really hard
and
life.
I know, like it's really like it's ridiculous like when I look back cuz I got kind of tired of it if I'm being honest. Like it was really fun, but it was like kind of stressful, honestly. Like there were parts of it that were really stressful, and it was just one of those things where it was like what's next, right? Like
Yeah.
okay, I've been doing this for a while. It's really fun, but like what's next? And like that was always like the big question mark for me. Like I was like I don't really know. I don't really know what's next, and I'm not great at uncertainty. I don't know that many people are. I think we're all kind of not great with uncertainty. But
Yeah.
but yeah, so then there was this amazing woman that was working at Disney at the time. Her name's Nikki Katz, and she started this program to try and get more gender diversity in technology within the technical organization at
Mhm.
Disney. So they set up this program where um, anybody could apply. Like it was, it was open to anybody to apply, but you would basically do kind of like I think I had to build like a tic-tac-toe game or something. Like you had to build something like pretty like basic
Mhm.
just so that you could like show that you could like follow, some instructions and like build something yourself. And then you'd go through this interview process, and then if you made it through, they would pay for you to do a 12-week boot camp. You would be fully employed still by the company the whole time, and then
Really?
if you ended up not liking it or it wasn't working out, they would hold your previous position for you so you could go back to it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was really phenomenal. I've only heard of like a handful of other companies that have done something similar. And like there are a lot of, I mean, it's Disney, it's a major corporation. There's like a lot of things that are wrong with it for sure, but I think this is one thing that they actually did pretty well. And they did get
Yeah.
right in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's an amazing opportunity. So you go, you do that. Obviously, you made it through. You decided that you enjoyed doing it, right?
Yeah.
So what was the first official like your job in tech? You're a full-time developer, and this is what you're doing. Like, what kind of development were you doing? What was like your language of choice? Like, where did you find
Yeah.
yourself?
So the boot camp that I did was all in Python,
Mhm.
and then they set us up with apprenticeships after it was finished. So I was an apprentice on a team, on a back end team, and they were like, "Oh, we work in Java." So I was kind of like freaking out at first because I was like, I only just learned this language and now I'm supposed to learn another, and I'm like starting this new position, and
Yep.
I was very scared. I was Yeah, I was just very, very scared. But I also lucked out, I think, in a big way because the team that I was working with, I had been mentored by the manager of the team. So I knew her pretty well, and she was just awesome and was so helpful. And it was with a team that was based in Canada. They were in British
Mhm.
Columbia, and they had been working on Club Penguin. So Club Penguin got bought by Disney. But it was really nice because like they definitely retained a lot of their culture. They had like a really nice company and team culture, and they really retained a lot of that. So I got put on like a dream team. Like they were all just really wonderful, and we were mostly working remote, but I did go up a couple of times to like meet them in person and work together. And
Mhm.
it's actually funny. I was realizing this the other day. I had never even put this together. But the first system that I worked on, it was a customer relationship management tool that had been built in house by the Club Penguin team. And it was really good. Like it was a good piece of software, and they wanted to use it throughout the whole company because like there's just so much like PII and it involves like children's data and stuff. So they were like, yeah, let's
Oh
just kind
wow.
of use this like homegrown thing. Um, and so they wanted to replatform it and then scale it so that it could be used by the entire company.
Sure.
Um, but for part of my training, when I was up there, I sat with, because it like integrated into their whole like call center basically, because they had a call center there where people could call in if they were having problems with the game or whatever. So for part of my training, I sat with the call center agent and I just watched like them take calls and like how they handled different things and like, how they logged things in the system. And yeah, I mean, and at Twilio, we like do stuff with call center. We have like a
Yeah.
call center product. And I had just like kind of forgotten about that whole experience. But yeah, I was like writing Java, like writing, little APIs on the back end there. I remember the very first thing that I built, it was like an email notification thing if
Mhm.
you lost your password. And when I finished it, I was so proud. I think I like took screenshots and like sent it to my family to be like, look what I did.
Oh yeah,
But
absolutely. I think that everybody has that, like, your first official project that you ship. Like I still remember the very first like project that I had. It was pretty simple, and basically I was converting an application from classic ASP over to ASP.NET. And like the only thing that I really had to do was, it was essentially the UI and the UI interactions. And I just had to basically port everything over.
mhm.
But like I got done with it and I was like, yeah, I did this. And then like a couple years later, after I had, gained some experience and stuff, it was like, all right, we have this new project and here you go. Have fun. And I'm like, okay, let's build this from scratch. And that was like a
Right.
completely different, a whole different animal. But like that was a project that I was actually like very, very satisfied with, like the impact that it had, and like people actually used it and they were happy with it. And
That's awesome.
um, so Java on the back end makes me cringe a little bit just because I'm a .NET developer. So you're doing Java, you're working on like back end APIs. What did you enjoy about that, and like what was the next challenge after you were doing that?
I honestly, it was just really refreshing to do something completely different that I had never done before. I mean, that was the very intimidating part of it, but also the
Mm,
really exciting part of it. And I just learned a lot from the developers that I worked with. They were all like very willing to kind of like show me the ropes. And I had like one senior software engineer who was like a mentor who like spent tons of time with me, just like explaining different things and dry. Like I didn't know what dry meant and like, just like things like that you kind of like learn along the way. I mean, I guess maybe some people might learn it if they do like a CS degree, but just like those kinds of like concepts and different like practices and things like that. Um yeah, I liked the learning aspect of it. I guess that's like kind of what I liked then and what I still like now. It is the thing that also drives me crazy because I feel like sometimes it's just so hard to keep up with everything.
it's
It's so
so
hard to keep up
difficult.
with all of the new things. But it keeps things exciting. It's like never a dull moment. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
sometimes a dull moment if you're like debugging something that is driving you crazy or trying to fix a like we were talking about SQL queries the other day, like trying to fix a query, it's like messed up, and you're like, just I'm just done with it. I'm just done.
No,
But
absolutely. That's totally real, because I've had a lot of people asking me recently, like how to get into development and what to expect and all of those things. And like one of the things I typically warn them about is, in order to be successful, you really have to have like a really high threshold for failure.
yeah,
Because if if you start to hit a wall on something and your threshold for failure is pretty low, meaning you give up fairly easily, you're not going to make it as a developer, because maybe I'm really slow, and that could totally be the case, but I've had problems that I was working on where it took me days to
Oh
figure out
yeah,
what the problem was. And like I'm
absolutely.
beating my head against the keyboard, and no amount of Googling or Stack Overflow articles are saving me because of this
Yeah.
like random edge case that I've come across that I'm trying to debug. Um, but it's the persistence of trying to find new ways to attack the problem, and trying to think of all the different possibilities that you have at your fingertips,
Yeah.
and all like the all right, well, let me go work on this like little menial CSS issue that somebody reported, and let this like run in the back of my mind because I'm so frustrated right now that I can't see past what I'm currently doing. Which
Oh,
is
absolutely.
it's
Or let
like
me go, like, I remember one of my mentors, like, early on was like, if you've run into a problem and you can't figure it out, you've looked everything up, you've talked about it with somebody else, you've gone to someone else for help, which was really key for me because I very much used to be like I just want to handle everything on my own. I just want
yeah,
to do it by
absolutely.
myself. And like I would say for people starting out, that will be your biggest hurdle if you're that
Mm,
type of person, is just asking for help, because you could spin your wheels for days on something. Like that happened to me where I'd spin my wheels for days on something. And if I just asked the senior engineer, they would have helped me figure it out in like 10 minutes, you know? Because there's like, I think there's a period of time where it's maybe good for you to struggle and figure or try to figure it out on your own. But there does hit a limit where it's like, just go ahead and like ask somebody else, you know? Like,
yeah.
no one's gonna judge you. Like, no one's gonna like, hopefully, I mean, there are probably environments where that happens, but
Yeah,
hopefully
sure.
you found an environment where it is safe to like just bring all of your questions.
Yeah, I think
Because I
that
feel very lucky in that regard too.
there's always this balance between like you want somebody to try to find the solution for themselves, because there's value in like learning how to properly form your Google queries, and what types of keywords you need to use in your search to get the results that you want. But then there does come that point where you're you're just wasting time, and
Mm,
you really need to phone a friend and keep moving forward. And I had a ton of instances where I was beating my head against something, and um, I'm like, no, I'm not asking anybody for help on this. I'm going to figure
yeah.
this out. And like 2 days later, like I'd have somebody like tap me on the shoulder, and they're like, hey, are you still working on that thing? And I'm like, yeah. And they were like, well, why don't you try this? Because I've seen that before. And it was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
in 5 minutes, the thing was fixed. And then like you feel so dumb and demoralized, and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I just wasted all of this time. Now I got to make
Mhm.
up all of this time that I wasted, because we got to ship this feature, we got to do whatever.
Yeah.
Like that was always like one of the hardest things to find that balance. And so like I basically like talked with my boss and my peers, and I was like, so what is where's that sweet spot in between? And I think
Right.
what we came up with was, if if you have struggled with something for an hour to a couple of hours,
Mhm.
depending on what the urgency is, you have to kind of gauge that. You you have to be able to explain to the group, or whoever you're speaking with, all of the steps that you've taken to try to solve
Yes.
the problem. And you have
Yeah.
to be able to clearly articulate, well, I've looked for this, I found these articles, I've tried XYZ, and none of these have worked. What are
Yeah.
my next steps? And so that was kind of like the process that we had come up with. And I found that a lot of times, if I would sit down and actually like talk through everything, there were a lot of those problems that, as I'm sitting there talking through, well, I tried this and I did this, and I was like, ah, crap, I didn't try such and such. Let's go try this really quick.
Yeah.
And you end up solving it for yourself. And so it's like that, a lot of people have heard of rubber ducking,
Yeah.
which is where you basically talk to somebody and they don't really say anything back to you. You're just talking through the problem, and talking through the problem really helps you solve it. So
Mhm.
a lot of times what I end up doing, like my wife will walk in the office and she's like, who are you talking to? And I'm like, oh, I'm talking to myself, because I'm sitting here
Yeah.
talking through the problem, because I'm working remotely, or like I'll be sitting on the couch like going through code and I'm talking to myself. What are you doing? Oh, I'm rubber ducking right now. Yeah, I'm talking to myself. So that's just
Yeah, no, it's so true. Just like getting it like basically because you can go over something in your mind by yourself so many different times and just think about it the same way. But even yeah, writing it down, saying it out loud. I've had situations where like I've gone to sleep and then I wake up the next morning and I've like gone to look at something and immediately it's been like, oh yeah, like I don't know. I don't know. Like I forgot. I was gonna say I forgot like a semicolon, but really that it was never like things like that that were like the big issues. It was usually more like a structural thing. But I
yeah.
can't think of a good example now. But anyway, yeah, situations where it would be like, oh yeah, like I didn't try this, or like you're on a run. I know like you do like endurance sports, so
Yeah.
I've had those situations too where it's like, all right, I'm just gonna like close my laptop and like go take a long run, and then somewhere along the way, like when I'm not even really thinking about it, the solution kind of pops up.
Yeah, I think there's something really beneficial about, letting it kind of work kind of in your subconscious when you're doing other things and you're actively focused on other things. Because a lot of times it's like you have to figure out like when that good point is for you to walk away from the keyboard. Because a lot of times my best debugging happens when I'm not at my computer and
Hmm.
I'm like doing something else and doing like what you said, like going for a run, or like, taking a shower, cleaning the house, like something menial that you're really not using a lot of brain power for. And you're sitting there and you're kind of like thinking about it a little bit, and all of a sudden, like, oh crap, I didn't try that, or oh, this might work, or oh, I really need to change this. And that's like the eureka moment of when things come together and you manage to fix it.
Yeah, and like I need to be better about doing this, so maybe this is something that we could work on. Like I feel like I learned so much from having my code reviewed and reviewing other people's code. Like that was how I really learned a lot. And I miss that sometimes, like with like, kind of building things that aren't necessarily like going into production anywhere, that are
Yeah.
more just like demos and stuff. But that was a big way, a big part of how I feel like I learned at the beginning, especially, was just by like getting familiarity with it, kind of um, doing something. Oh man, I can't tell you how many times I would do something and think like, this is brilliant. This is perfect. Like best ever. Nobody could do anything better. And then like a senior would look at it and be like, okay, so, like let's change this and, just refactor the crap out of it. But like always very constructively, right? Like always like explaining the trade-offs. And I think that's a good thing that you can ask as like if you're just getting into tech, as you're just curious about it, or you're an apprentice or you're a junior, like ask people to kind of explain the reasoning behind things. And I mean, a lot of people do already, but I think that that's a really helpful way to learn kind of the differences between things, or why you might choose one thing over another.
Right. So, you had this really great opportunity to be in an environment where you had somebody or people who were there to kind of help you along and mentor you and do those code reviews. What if do you have any suggestions maybe for people who aren't in a traditional scenario like that, or maybe somebody who's like just getting started out? Like I've heard a lot of suggestions from people like if you want to get good at writing code, then you need to spend time reading other people's code, or um, working on other projects and getting involved in some kind of like coding community or something like that. Um, like, have you had any experience with that? Have you like mentored anybody towards that?
Yeah, yeah. So after I finished the program, I mentored another person that was coming up through the program after me, and that was a really wonderful experience. Yeah, I would say honestly, like, so another really sort of like formative experience for me as a developer was I did this programming sabbatical based in New York called the Recurse Center. And the whole sort of ethos around RC is that people learn best when they're working on something that they care about or that they're interested in. And so it's a self-directed program because that is kind of the mentality of like, if you actually are interested and excited about what you're working on, then you're going to want to work on it. And I
Right.
think that's been so helpful for me. And that's one thing that when people ask me for advice, that's the number one thing that I, um, try to share is just like find something that you're interested in and work on that. Build something that is actually going to help you in your day to day, or that that you think is cool or that you think is interesting. Because if you are constantly like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. Oh, and I've been there. Like I took, I don't want to badmouth this company because they're great. I took this interview prep course that was great, but like it was grueling. Like I didn't want to do it, right? It
Mm.
was like, I'm doing this because I feel like I need to do it to get better and improve, but like I hate it. And honestly, it reminds me of exercise in that way as well, because I am a big believer in that too. Like if you like want to move more, like then it's helpful to find a movement that you actually enjoy, that you're not going
Yeah.
to feel like, oh, I have to drag myself out of bed to go do this every day. So I think really like repetition and just practicing and doing it, just getting, going in Code Sandbox and like working on something, making a little glitch app, it doesn't even always have to be like a big, thing that you turn
Yeah.
into something that becomes your side project. It could just be, something that you work on a little bit each day. But I think just getting in code and actually making stuff is like the best thing that you can do if you're starting out.
So, we've talked a little bit about, okay, you went from dancer to journalist, doing social media and marketing, working at Disney, having that great job, getting this opportunity to go write code, and now you're a developer evangelist. How did you go from, all right, I want to write code full time, to, all right, now I want to be a developer evangelist and help other people do what they do best?
Yeah, another thing that I definitely would recommend is like finding community in whatever form that you can. Like I I was at this was after I went through this whole period where I was very like, you have to get a job at this type of place doing this thing to be like legitimate and whatever. Like it was very not great mental time for me.
Yeah.
But so I was doing all these interviews, and like I had gotten invited by this one company to do this, like it was sort of like an interview slash workshop type thing. And I met this woman in there, and it was so funny. I'll never forget it. Because like looking back, it was very poorly organized. And I think they kind of did that on purpose. I think that they intentionally made it very difficult to understand like what we were even supposed to be doing, just to see how
Mm.
people would like deal with it.
Sure.
And she just got up and left. And we had exchanged information because I kind of knew her through like a Python meetup. And then later on she was like, why would I want to go somewhere that treats people that way? Or like, why would I want to work at a place that does something like that? And I was just like, it was just mind blowing to me because I had never had that mentality. I had always thought like, oh, I'm not good enough and I have to get better to be the best, to be at this, place. Whereas like she was like, no, like I want to be in a place where I'm like supported, I'm
Mm.
challenged, I'm happy. And so that was like a huge mindset shift for me to like see someone just like actually ask for what they wanted and say no to what they didn't want.
Yeah.
Um and so then her and I, like, we started kind of just like spending more time together, and she was inviting me to like meetups, and she hosted this like dinner once a month for like other like women and non-binary people in tech. And so I met actually Megan Spear, who is at Segment now, but was at Twilio for a while. I mean, Twilio and Segment are the same thing, but
Yeah.
um but yeah, so I met Megan there, and she was just talking about what she did and talking about Twilio, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool. Like that sounds fun. That sounds like a fun, interesting job." And that was kind of when I started to be like, maybe DevRel could be like a good fit for me, because I was missing a lot of the other aspects of my former job, like more of the social elements of it, like going to events, things like that. And I hadn't even heard of DevRel. Like I didn't even know that it existed. And it was definitely kind of combination of like what I had been doing prior to becoming a software engineer, and then, taking some of the things that I had been learning, on
Yeah.
the job as a software engineer. So, yeah, when I was at RC, I started just like talking with more people that were in DevRel and learning a little bit more about it. And um, then this role came up, and it was just it was like very serendipitous, honestly. Like the timing of it all was kind of wild, how it all just fell into place. And actually, like, I think this story is important to tell. So as part of like my interview, I had to live code, and I probably didn't prepare for it as much as I should have, if I'm being totally honest. And I also freaked out when I went to go do my presentation, and I didn't do very well. Like it bombed. Like I did a bad job. But I tried to stay calm about it, but of course then I went home and I like sobbed because I was like, every other part of the interview was so great, and it affirmed that I actually do really want this job, and then I've like blown it. But then like the one of the people who was interviewing me sent me this really wonderful email and was basically like, I've been in your shoes. Like I've failed at a demo in front of, hundreds of people, and like we want to give you another shot, basically,
Oh
because we
wow.
think that you were just having an off day. And so I I probably made like 30 different people watch my demo, like that like following week before my second chance. I like practiced like over and over again, and then I went back and it went a lot better. So but yeah, but I failed the first time. I didn't do as well as I hoped, but that definitely, I feel like, gave me like the motivation and the drive to be like, I know this is what I want, and I know that I can do it. Now I just need to like put in the reps, basically, to be able to
Mhm.
like um to do really well. So yeah, and then like it's been a wild ride the last 2 years. My work anniversary was yesterday.
Yeah,
Um
huge congrats on 2 years. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I feel really lucky that like we get to do this work, because it really is so much fun working with developers and like seeing all the different things they're building, um and it's been a really rough 2 years just for everyone,
Yeah.
and I feel really fortunate that like in a lot of ways, I feel like we get the best of a lot of worlds. Like we get to like go in and basically like in the type of events we do, we get to go in and like just have fun with the developers. Do something that's maybe like a little bit different than what they're doing in their day to day. And so that's like definitely a privilege.
Yeah, I say it all the time and people probably think I'm cheesing, but I'm totally not. Like I think that we literally have the best job in the world. Like I wake up every morning, I freaking love my job. So I'm super thankful to be in the position that I'm in, and you're an awesome teammate. I love working with you. And you've just been great helping me out over the last 6 months. I'm already past 6 months. Holy cow. So what are the
Wow.
yeah, we're 6 months into this thing. So
Yeah.
what are like the passion projects that you're working on right now? What are the things that you're doing that you're passionate about and that you're working on?
Yeah, I'm a writer in my rest of my time that I'm not working. And I took some writing classes last year that I really loved. And it made me want to like have more of a practice this year. So
Hmm.
I'm really interested in finding ways to use programming, basically, to like enhance my writing or like kind of co-create, co-write some things. I actually saw this really cool project the other day that somebody did where it was like you could put in like two different terms, and then it would write like a paragraph for you about those two things. Like it was like a machine
Really?
learning thing. It was really
Wow.
well done. I can't remember who did it. But it was like on Twitter, it was like getting some love there. But yeah, there's like a lot of programs that I've seen around like computational writing. Whether that's kind of like you like co-writing with the computer in some way, or using it to like support your own writing. So that's something that I've been kind of exploring for the last couple of years, and something that I've been focusing on going into this year. So I've definitely done some little GPT-3 tinkering, and Yeah, super open. If anybody has things that they've found or that they're working on or inspiration when it comes to that, find me on Twitter and shoot me a message or send me that, because that's kind of like what is taking up most of my brain space these days.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I did drop your Twitch and your Twitter in chat. So are there any Twitch streams going to be happening?
Yeah, me and Nathaniel, we are meant to kick off a show this upcoming Wednesday. So yeah, stay tuned for that. It should be a lot of fun. We're basically, we're just gonna like build some stuff. We're gonna build some fun stuff with Twilio. My JavaScript is like pretty horrible. I've been working on it. I've been doing I've been writing JavaScript to try and like up my skills, which are quite lacking. So I think it'll be fun. It'll just be like a good time. We have a couple different little projects that we've been talking about doing, so we'll just pick one and kind of start there.
That's amazing. Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for being here. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me, Chris. I love working with you, and it's such an
Thanks.
honor to be on your stream.
No, it's been a blast, and obviously, kicking this off. This is episode 3. You were on the top of the list to get on here, so I really do appreciate you taking the time. Everybody, huge shout out to Liz. Go follow all the socials. Thank you so much for being here.